Photoshop's content-aware fill technology is an excellent way to remove objects in an image and fix areas that are distracting to the viewer. So in this video, we're going to take a look at two different ways to apply content-aware fill. We're going to start with this image where I just want to remove this lamp post here from the image. So I'll tap the L key, that will give me my lasso tool, and I'm just going to drag a selection around the lamp post and also the shadow here. So let's be sure to grab that whole shadow and then close our selection. So the first method for using content aware fill is under edit and then fill. You can choose the contents to content aware and be sure to enable the color adaptation so that Photoshop does a better blending of colors in the filled area. I'll click OK and we can see that Photoshop's done a very good job of using content aware fill. I'll click OK, and we can see that Photoshop's done a very good job of filling that area. All right, let's move to the next image because Photoshop has a more advanced version of content aware fill where we have a lot more control. In this case, I want to remove the iceberg in the left as well as the upper right. So again, I'll start by selecting that area. But before I select content aware fill, we'll want to make sure that we're actually on the background layer. So I'll choose edit and then content aware fill. And on the left-hand side, we see the original image, and on the right-hand side, we see a preview of the results. So there are three different options that I want to point out. The auto option, which is doing a terrific job in this case, but there's also a rectangular option that you can choose from, in which case Photoshop just changes the sampling area to a rectangle. It's this green area that's the sampling area. But I can also go in and change this to custom if I want a little bit more control. But then I'll use the brush tool to actually paint in the image area where I want the content aware fill to sample from. So in this case, it's not doing nearly as good of a job, so I'm going to return to the auto option. I'll want to make sure that I have my output settings set to new layer, but I also want to remove that iceberg on the right. So instead of clicking OK, I'll just apply this and then I'll use the spacebar in order to move over to the other iceberg. Then I'll select the lasso tool and drag a selection around that iceberg, and the content aware technology will fill in that area as well. Of course, I can always make changes to it. I can add to, or I can subtract from an area. I'll go ahead and click to add to an area and just incorporate a little bit more of this in here to see if we can get a little bit more of a seamless match there. You can see that every time I paint, Photoshop is actually recalculating the content aware fill. There are a number of additional options. For example, I can try changing the color adaptation. That's also going to change the way the content aware fills that area. So for now, I'm happy with those results. So I could either hit apply if I had additional areas to change, or I'll click OK in order to apply it. We can see in the layers panel, not only do I have the background layer and the retouching layer, I also now have these two layers where the content aware fill has created information to fill and patch the areas that I don't want. Excellent. Let's move to the river file. Now, this image is a little bit more complicated. If I just select this branch here that I want content aware fill to get rid of, and then I choose edit and content aware fill, it's going to have a little problem removing it because it's really not quite sure if it should fill that with rock or with water. So I'm going to hit cancel to cancel out of here. And then I'm going to zoom in using Command 1 on Mac or Control 1 on Windows. And I'm just going to help out Photoshop. I'll go ahead and deselect and then tap the S key in order to select the clone stamp tool and use the right bracket to get a little bit larger of a brush. Then I'll option click in the water area and I'll just paint a little bit here so that there's a border between the leaves and the rock. I can get a little bit of a smaller brush if I want to be more precise and just go right along that rock line. I'll do the same thing, sampling from a little bit further away in order to paint over this area right down here So again, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to be sure that when I go into content aware fill, Photoshop knows the difference between the rock area and the river area. I don't really like the job that I've done there, but that's okay because I'm going to include it in part of my selection. So I'll tap the L key to select the lasso tool, and then I'll just drag around this area that I want content aware fill to fix. I'll select it from the menu, and this time it should do a much better job of filling that area with the river. Excellent. I'll go ahead and apply that. And then I'll return to the lasso tool here in Content Aware Fill because I also want to select this area down here of the leaves. So let's hold down the space bar, and in the image area on the left, I'll go ahead and drag around those leaves. Photoshop will go ahead and fill that with Content Aware. So I'll click Apply, and then I'll scoot that over a little bit more and just select these two areas of the leaves as well. Again, clicking Apply when I'm satisfied with the results. And I might need to do that one more time right over in this area. Again, clicking Apply when I'm happy with those results. Now that zoomed in quite a bit there, so I can go ahead and zoom back out to see what that might look like. So in a case like this, I might need to go ahead and apply this by clicking OK, and then I'll deselect. And if I need to, I can always choose one of the other content aware tools, such as the spot healing brush, if I see any repeating patterns or if there's anywhere in that area that I want to fix. Excellent. Let's option click on the eye icon just to see a little before and after. All right, I'm going to move to this fourth image here of the snail because I want to show you an instance where content aware fill may fail at first. Again, I'll select the lasso tool, and I just want to select this area here. It looks like there's just been a little problem when the snail was growing, and I want to have it automatically fill with a more continuous line. So I'll choose Edit and then Content Aware Fill. But this time in the fill settings, I'll want to make sure to allow for rotation adaptation. Let's just scoot this over so we can see the before and after. And I'll change this from none maybe to low. Now it's going to warn me because I'm using the auto option here, but that's okay. I'll go ahead and click all right. Well, it's rotated it a little bit. Let's go ahead and increase that maybe all the way up to high. And we don't need to see that warning again, so I'll toggle it off. And now it's doing a much better job. I can also choose the scale option, which will allow content aware fill to resize the image as it fills that area. Excellent. I'll click OK, deselect, and we can see the before and after. So for quick fixes, using the Edit menu and choosing Fill may do the job, but for more complex areas and for more flexibility and control, the new Content Aware Workspace is an excellent tool.